brings me home, the light that guides the way.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of my podcast called Let's Talk About You. And today I have a very special guest with me, Michelle Wolf from the band Michelle Wolf and The Wolfpack, which I've got to say has to be one of the coolest names of the band I've ever heard.
Thank you.
So Michelle, thanks a lot for being with us today. So let me start by asking, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Today's actually August 1st. I can't believe we're nearing the end of the summer, but I'm doing well.
I know this year has just flown by.
I
I
know.
looked at the date this morning. I'm like, oh, can't believe it's August already.
I know.
So Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about your music, what kind of music you do, and how you got into it?
Sure. Well, I started singing at a young age, just at home. My brother actually picked up guitar in his early teens, and I kind of followed suit, and he taught me on the acoustic, and then him and I just kind of started playing and singing along. Um, Fast forward to my teen years, I did a lot of talent shows and different contests and stuff like that. And then I started getting into playing with others, and I was in a couple bands in my late teens, early 20s. And fast forward to now, I created my own band, and I did the solo stuff for a while, and then I released my first solo album in 2015, and then
Oh,
from
wow.
then on, I kind of just continued that in different projects, and probably about 5 years ago, solidified Michelle Wolf and the Wolfpack, and here we are. So we play the covers we do. We like to put our own unique twist on it. We like to take a song and maybe put a different sound on it and give it a new sound when we perform it. And our original music is kind of a mixture of rock, folk. Um, it's so hard to describe your own
Mhm.
sound,
Right.
but I definitely feel like our music is very rock centered. The covers we play can range from rock to folk to blues to Motown, um, a little bit of everything. So we don't put ourselves in a box, if you will.
Absolutely. And that's one of the best things about being a musician or an artist. I
Yes,
think that the sky's the limit, right? As cliche as it may sound, but
definitely.
that is actually the reality. There's so much you can do with any art that, a person does. And being a musician myself, music is really close to my heart. So, that's the first thing I would, do whenever I get a chance. So, Michelle, you mentioned that, you guys, your band, you do covers, you do your own music as well, and you released your first album back in 2015. And by the way, for all of our listeners and viewers, I'm going to be putting a lot of links in the description of this video. So make sure you guys go check out all the music that Michelle has been doing and also is doing these days. And Michelle, we're going to talk a bit more about that here in the next few minutes. But you have some pretty awesome shows coming up as well in the next few weeks, right?
Yeah,
Awesome.
we've got 3 shows this month. So I'm sure you'll post the information about all that. But
Absolutely.
if you're in the Michigan area, this Saturday we're doing a St. Clair Shores Porch concert.
Awesome.
We're actually teaming up with one of our friends' bands, and we're opening up for them. So that'll be this Saturday, August 5th. And then
Nice.
next Friday, August 11th, we'll be at the Raven Cafe in Port Huron, which is one of our favorite spots. It's a very unique place with amazing food, coffee. They have a full bar. It's an Edgar Allan Poe themed
Hmm.
cafe, so it's
Oh, wow.
very, very cool. There's lots to see and do. Really cool building, just a different vibe. And then the following Friday, August 18th, we'll be in Royal Oak at Michigan by the Bottle Tasting Room. It's a winery.
Hmm.
So got a lot coming up. And then we've got some shows in September and October as well. So definitely have to look those up.
Absolutely. I mean, you have a pretty tight schedule coming up, but hey,
Me
it's all
too.
exciting, getting to do music, all these
It
shows, nothing
is.
better than that, right?
Feel
And like
grateful, that's for sure.
absolutely. And like Michelle mentioned that we are going to be posting a lot of links, so make sure you guys, if you're in town in Michigan, if you're around those areas, you don't want to miss this music because you're just going to rock it. So, Michelle, you mentioned that, when you guys do cover songs, you like to add, your flavor to it, which is great because, that's sort of what defines you as a band from the others. I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm coming to watch you guys live, I want to, what I want to listen to is, how your band sounds like. So can you tell us a little bit about, what sort of cover songs? I mean, you mentioned a lot of genres there that you
Hmm.
cover, but is there like any specific set of bands or musicians that you really love covering the songs from?
Um, I feel like a lot of our covers, some of them, a majority of them probably come from the 60s to the 90s. I grew up on dad rock. I love
Oh yeah.
50s, 60s, 70s rock. Not just rock and roll, but that's one of my favorite genres. So I feel like, um, like the Fleetwood Mac, the Led Zeppelin,
Oh
stuff
yeah.
like that. And then even into the 90s, alternative and grunge. And along with all the female artists in the 90s, Alanis, Jewel, stuff like that. So I feel like that's where our comfort is for sure.
Hmm.
But I mean, one of our favorite covers is A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke. So we take it
Oh,
back.
nice.
Definitely a different sound. So, but I'd say it's interesting because um, one of our conversations my bandmates and I just had was to maybe put some more newer covers on our set because I think we all kind of we feel comfortable and we lean towards more of the older music.
Hmm.
And sometimes when I'm out seeing live shows, I'm like, oh, that's a really cool song, that might be on the radio right now, that could get the interest of some new listeners. So I definitely trying to challenge myself lately to come up with some newer covers to add in there because I do feel like myself and my bandmates, we really lean towards the older stuff that we were
Hmm.
inspired by. And it's kind of our comfort. But that's also something that I think the fans really like too. Is it's that nostalgia. It brings them back. That's the
Yeah,
music that's always sticks with us. So yep, got to do
absolutely.
a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and what you just said is so relatable. In fact, the show that I have coming up next month is actually called Nostalgia because we are covering a
Oh,
lot of the old
cool.
music. And I say I say it's relatable because, I grew up, basically listening to the same kind of stuff that you mentioned.
Yeah,
Used to listen to the stuff that my dad was listening to and then my older brothers. And over time I just, it just became my favorite kind of music, right? And because I was singing a lot of that music or doing a lot of that music, naturally my audiences also, sort of filtered out that way. But like you said,
definitely.
now that we sometimes go out, we're like, okay, you know what? We need to learn a little bit of new music as well because, there are
Yeah,
other people out there too that want to come and see us. So Michelle,
definitely.
yeah, absolutely. So Michelle, one of the things I'm always curious about when I talk to, fellow musicians is, like how were you able to find your own sound? And what I mean by that is, I've met some people and, they've had their favorite musicians, singers, and I've done it myself too that, sometimes like I would just try to sound as, as similar to that musician as possible when we're
Hmm.
covering their song. And over time I realized that, okay, if I want to, create my own identity, I need to find my own sound. And that was a struggle because I was just not used to singing in a voice that I just didn't know. So have you ever come across something like that, or how easy or difficult was it for you to find your own unique sound that differentiated you from maybe the other musicians that you love listening to?
Um, that's a great question. I feel like, um, in a way, I'm still finding my sound. Um, I think it's just something that kind of continues to evolve as you become a better musician or a better singer. Um, it when I look back on like even the album I put out in 2015, I'm like, man, I could do that so much better now, which is a
Mhm.
good thing. I'm still proud of it, but it's just that's great that I've grown and evolved. I think it's just finding my voice and my own sound has kind of come natural. It's just something I've always just loved to do music, not for any other reason other than it's kind of my therapy and
Mhm.
it's very healing. And um, I'd like to say that my sound is always going to continue to evolve, but I think finding my sound vocally has been pretty easy just because I've always felt like that was my strong suit over my guitar playing. I've always said my voice is my main instrument. So it's certainly evolved over time. And I think it's just that confidence and honestly, playing live really contributes to that too.
Right.
Not to say that recording in a studio doesn't have its own difficulties and that you can't find your sound, but I think playing live is a whole different ball game, and it just really gets you comfortable with, how you want to sing something. And I don't always sing the songs the same way, even from show to show. So, yeah, I think I'm. I'd like to just say that I'm always evolving in my sound. So I hope to always improve and evolve in that way.
Hmm. That's great. And I'm gonna expand on something that you just mentioned, that how music is like a therapy. It definitely has a
Definitely.
healing power. And although recording in a studio has its own charm altogether, but there's something about being on stage that just you cannot just match it.
So
Even if
true.
there are even if there are like 10 or 15 people sitting in the audiences, I that's plenty enough for me, right? Sometimes.
Hey, I've played for five people and I've
Exactly.
played for 500. I love it all the same.
All exactly all the same. So I was talking to my friend the other day, and I always like to categorize being on stage as being in my happy space. It's a happy feeling altogether, because every time I'm up on stage, I feel like that I can do anything here, nobody's going to judge me, and that's like a different
Yes,
feeling altogether. So oftentimes, and this is something that I've learned over time, that you might be feeling a certain way the entire day, but as soon as you get on stage, there's like it's like a switch that you can
it
turn on, and
is.
you're in a different zone altogether. So I wanted to ask you, like, when let's say that you've been practicing for days, you might be a bit exhausted, but as soon as you get on stage, how does that change for you?
Um, it, I never like the stage is very a comforting place for me. I don't really get nervous. It's more of like an anxious excitement. It's just kind of a place you can let go. I actually grew up dancing since I was 7 years old
Oh wow.
and have taught for the past 12 years too. So I contribute a lot of my comfortability performing and on stage to being a dancer. It definitely has set the path as far as performance wise. Not to say that um, it's the same as dance, but um, it definitely it definitely gave me a step ahead as far as the performance goes. And it's basically like telling a story. I just feel free and also like I'm sure like how you said the excitement and of getting on stage. It's like that adrenaline too that doesn't go away. It's like a high, and
Hmm.
then after the show, it's like you're on a high and it's hard to come down. It's a weird feeling afterwards too. It's something I always explain to my husband. I'm like, he's like, aren't you so tired after show? I'm like, no, I feel like my adrenaline is going and I can't like calm down for a while after. It's hard to explain unless you're a musician and you know how that
Hmm.
feels.
It's one of those things that you have to be there to understand how
Yes,
it truly feels.
definitely.
And I agree, for me as well, like the time after the performance is sometimes more exciting than the performance itself, because I'm just
Yes, because you're
thinking about what just
reflecting
happened.
and yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
For sure. And
And
that's the beauty too. Like, I mean, I love recording and that's a whole nother beautiful experience in itself. But with recording, you can stop and go back and fix something. But with live performance, you roll with it, whether it's a
Mhm.
beautiful thing or whether it's a mess up or whether it's something you didn't mean to do. So, definitely it's a whole different ball game.
Right. And it's interesting you say that, because although somebody is singing on stage, but it's actually the overall performance that people come and watch, right?
Yes.
And I used to get really, like you mentioned, that looking back at the stuff that you have done before. I mean, if I look back 10 years, I'm just embarrassed that, okay, was
Me
I really
too.
doing
I know.
right?
But that's a
So
part of growth, right?
it's yeah, it is a happy feeling at the same time because you're like, okay, that means I have grown a little bit since then.
Yes.
But I remember that I used to get really, stressed out if I like, missed a note here or there. But over time, I've realized that people that are sitting in the audience, they are enjoying the way you're performing, and that
Certainly.
doesn't always mean that you're just moving around too fast or something. Even if it's like a slow song but you're like so much into it, the kind of feeling that you give in your vocals, that's what people are there to listen to. And in that case, even if something gets messed up a little bit here and there, that's fine, because that's all part of part of the live performance.
Yeah.
Whereas, like you said, in recording, I sometimes feel like that recording is more difficult, because the back of my mind is always
It
like, okay, if
is.
I, right,
Yeah.
because if I make a mistake, oh, you know what, I can always go back and edit it. But in live, you're like, nope, that's it, you gotta go and have
Nope.
fun.
And like, I mean, 9 times out of 10, the only people that notice a mistake are you, maybe your bandmates, but
Yeah.
that's the beauty of live performance. I always say that to my dance students, like, this is live performance. You get up, you do the dance. If you mess up, you got to keep going. No one's a robot. Like,
Exactly.
it's all about how you pick it back up and how you come from it. And honestly, some mistakes I've made have actually turned into really cool changes in a song,
Hmm.
or it's one time I wrote this song in the spring, and it was one of our first times performing it live. And I don't know what it was, but I started the rhythm off really different than what we practice on my guitar. And I played through a couple measures, and I look at my drummer and my bassist, I'm like, just go with it. Like,
Hmm.
because I can't stop and change the rhythm. And it ended up being so cool. And we looked at each other, we're like, man, we got to do that again. And then we couldn't, for the life of us, when we got back to the next rehearsal, I could not play that rhythm. I'm like, why? I wish
Hmm.
someone would have recorded that. But it's just funny. It's live performance for you.
Exactly. That reminds me, I think it was one of the rehearsals I was doing once with my band, and we were supposed to play a song from B minor. Originally it was
Okay.
C minor, but my my skill is a bit lower, so we were like, okay, let's just bring a little bit down. But they ended up playing it at C minor because that's what they were used to. And it was probably like fifth or sixth song in the jam session. I didn't really notice, but afterwards I'm like, you know what? It was a little bit more straining than I was expecting, and it sounded
Yeah.
different. And they were like, oh, sorry. And I'm like, wait, hey man, it worked out. It means that I can. And
Yeah,
that was one of the sessions where I got some confidence that, okay, I can probably look into trying out some higher scales, because I was
for
always in my
sure.
mind, that I just cannot.
Yeah. It's a
And
good
and
reminder to not just get stuck in your comfort zone,
yes,
because we all have our
exactly.
comfort for sure.
Absolutely. And Michelle, you just mentioned that you about the live performances that you have told your dance students as well, that you gotta go out there, enjoy, and have fun. So you have been doing music for quite some time, and you've got a lot of experience being on stage. As a like, you have done dancing and you have done singing. So how does that experience and being an artist, and I would say being like a professional artist, how does that help you, teach your students? Because essentially, you're practicing art and then you're teaching it to your students as well. Like,
Hmm.
how does that help? Like, and when you're explaining things to your students, I'm sure you have a lot of excitement, in the way you're teaching. How are students typically, respond to the way you're teaching them?
I think my teaching style is heavily based on the music. I mean, musicality is a huge part of dance. One of my favorite styles to teach and to perform is tap dance,
Oh,
and
nice.
that's basically making music with your feet.
Yeah.
And with any style of dance, I always tell my students that the song is your leader, whether
Hmm.
it's the beat, whether it's the lyric, whether it's the melody, whatever you're following or dancing to. So I think being a dancer has made me a better musician, and being a musician has definitely made me a better dancer and teacher. So, I always, one thing I challenge my students to do is to really listen to a song, no matter what style of dance
Hmm.
it is. There's not, you know, even as just a music listener, as a lyricist, as a singer, of course, I'm going to pay attention to lyrics, but, a guitarist is probably going to notice the guitar riff, or a
Hmm.
drummer is going to notice the drum beat, and so forth. So, But being a musician, I think I'm able to listen to each part, and that helps me as a dancer and to choreograph as well. And I always challenge my students to like really listen to the piece of music. What is the
Hmm.
backbeat? What is the accent? What are the lyrics saying? How do the lyrics sound? So um, it's all cohesive for sure. And I think um, you're not just dancing, you're a musician too as a dancer. You kind of
Hmm.
have to be, especially as a choreographer too, to create something unique. You have to be able to pick apart a song, and I think I've had an advantage in that area, and I really just try to emphasize that to the kids. No matter what style of dance, you always have to let the music lead you. So,
Absolutely. And Michelle, you mentioned, being a lyricist as well. And, I wanted to ask you, like, when you're sitting down and, writing a song, what is typically your process? And what I mean by that is, let's say if you're sitting, you think of lyrics, you start writing it down. But do you also start imagining the music that should go along with it right away? Or is it just to focus on lyrics first and then the music comes after, or vice versa? Like, what is your typical process?
um, I'd say it's not 100% always the same, but majority of the time, 90% of the time, the lyrics usually come first.
Hmm.
And then sometimes it will be just lyrics. Sometimes I'll even start singing the lyrics in a melody and then match that to my guitar. Um, but I think I don't like to force anything. I'm sure
Hmm.
we've all had those moments where like a song comes out really easy. I have to, but the majority of the time, I feel like it's bits and pieces. A lot of times I'll have a central idea of what I'm thinking and feeling, and might want the next song to be about. And then, over periods of time, I'll jot down lines or certain ideas that kind of match that. And then it just goes from there. But most of the time, it's going to start with the lyrics for me. It's something that I'm pushing myself to do is to try to write more on the guitar because I think
Hmm.
that will also inspire different lyrics, and I won't be so um, the lyrics won't always be in the driver's seat, if that makes sense.
Right.
I'm trying to expand my guitar playing
Absolutely. Yeah.
abilities to just kind of broaden that a little bit more because I do have a comfort zone, like,
Hmm.
a comfort melody, comfort note. So I think if I challenge myself to kind of come up with some guitar stuff first, it might challenge me vocally too. So
Right.
yeah.
That comfort zone is also so relatable because if it were up to me, I would do all my songs in D major.
Aha, I love it.
Right.
I
Um,
love
uh,
E minor. It's
that's also one
very
of the versions.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. In fact, I'm gonna give a shout out to our mutual friend Ryan Toko. The first time I sat with him, and I was, I mean, I've told him that he was my first teacher, if you may, because I learned a lot of guitar from him. And I remember the
That's
first thing I learned
awesome.
from him was actually in E minor.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Um,
He's an incredible guitarist. And he
he is.
also is an incredible artist. I have to shout
Oh,
out.
look at that.
He created our band logo a couple years ago. And if you look close, it says the Wolfpack
The
in the
Wolfpack.
logo. It's pretty cool. So
Awesome.
he's an
Yeah,
awesome guy, awesome musician, awesome artist, really
he
cool
is.
person,
And
great
that
friend.
absolutely. And that logo is as cool as the name, I should say.
Thank you.
So, and so Michelle, you mentioned, we were talking about the creative process, and you mentioned that, sometimes things might come easy as you're writing a song. And, one thing that really caught my attention is when you mentioned that, there are things that you just cannot force. And,
Hmm.
that's one thing that I've always felt about music. I mean, there were times when somebody was like, hey, you know what? Let's write something about this. And I'm like, okay, well, the topic may not be very inspiring for me, or I may not have inspiration or enough inspiration to write something about it. So every time I
Hmm.
felt that something is being forced upon me, for any creative purpose, it just doesn't come out the way I would intend it to.
Yeah, same. I mean, I feel like I have to sit on an idea for a minute, kind
Hmm.
of let it fester, think about it. Very rarely have I been able to just, spit out. a song about
Right.
an idea on the spot.
Absolutely.
But
So along the same lines, Michelle, like when you're going through, that creative process of writing a song, what is your typical inspiration? Like, for example, there are people, including myself, if I'm sitting out in the nature, a certain view might inspire me. Birds chirping in a certain way might inspire me. Like it could be anything, but for some people, it is, typically something very specific. So, how do you draw
yeah.
your inspiration, or where do you draw your inspiration from when it comes to writing music?
Um, I'd like, as far as inspiration for the ideas, I'd like to say it's something beautiful like nature, but it's usually pain. It's
Hmm.
usually, the trials and tribulations of life.
Right.
Um, I have to say, a lot of times getting out in nature and separating myself from the everyday, life that we live, um, that can help me to continue to write a song. I have to say that. But a lot of my inspiration comes from, real life issues and things I've gone through, relationships and of every kind, not just romantic
Hmm.
relationships. But yeah, I always say, I used to say I can't write a happy song, but I guess that might be interpretation. But yeah, honestly, just a lot of real life inspiration, just what I'm feeling. And I think ultimately a lot of people can relate to that. We're all human.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely. And that's something I would definitely 110% agree with because, I mean, I have not written a lot of music, but for like majority of what I've written was also along the same lines because I just felt that it was easier to express in that, zone
yeah,
than otherwise. And probably because like I think you nailed it when you said that that's something that most people can just relate to. So,
yeah, you
it's
have to
easy to
put
convey
that
the
pain
feeling.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think,
exactly.
yeah, I think, and you helped me kind of think of that, like looking back at my first album, like, it's like that those feelings needed to go somewhere in order for me to release them, and that's kind of what it comes back to, is my music is my therapy, because then
Hmm.
you have this little masterpiece, this little baby that you created,
Right.
and yeah, you can kind of release it from within you and have this little piece of art. So
Absolutely. And Michelle, I want to talk about, some of your music shows coming up, as well as, some of the. So I think you're also working on some of your original music as well these days.
yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, like, with your schedule, how often do you do music with your band, or how often do you jam? Like, let's say if you have a show every week or every other week, like, what is your typical jam schedule when it comes to that?
We try to at least get together once a week. That's usually our goal. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but most of the time we are able to rehearse once a week. And
Hmm.
then, regularly, we usually have 2 to 3 shows a month. Our schedule is going to slow down in the winter because I am expecting a baby in November.
Oh
So,
wow! Congratulations.
yeah, thank
That's
you.
awesome.
So, thank you. We're very excited, my husband and I. So, our last show is going to be the end of October, and then we'll take a 2 to 3 month break, and then hopefully get back on the show wagon sometime in February or March. But
Hmm.
it's funny because like we've really been pushing to record, and we have 3 songs that actually were just sent off to mastering. So hopefully within the
Oh
next few
wow!
weeks they're going to be released.
Awesome.
Fingers crossed. So we'll have
Absolutely.
that to share with you. But it's funny because we're like, you know, we the 2 other bandmates and I, we have other jobs. We,
Hmm.
unfortunately, we can't focus our entire life on music, although I'm sure we'd love to.
Yeah.
But we always say, like, okay, we're gonna slow down on shows for a few months so that we can, push to record and get in the studio. And then it's like opportunities come up, and we're like, well, we'll just do this show. We'll just do
Hmm.
this show. So it's kind of funny. I'm glad we've been able to get the songs finished this summer, and as well as play some great shows. So,
Right.
yeah, we usually practice once a week, show 2 or 3 times a month, and then yeah, it just kind of depends. So,
Awesome. And just a quick reminder to our listeners and viewers that I am going to be putting a lot of links in the description, of Michelle's band page and, some dates and information about the shows that are coming up. So if you are in the area, just make sure you guys go and watch it because, again, you do not want to miss it. And, Michelle, it's funny that you mentioned that, sometimes we plan on recording stuff, but then when an opportunity to perform live comes up, that's, the whole focus goes there.
I
And
know.
just recently, like, between like last year and a half, Ryan and I did two songs, but then he's coming over to Dallas next month to perform in a show with me here.
That's
And we were
awesome.
actually working on a song. We're working on some music ideas and lyrics, but as soon as the show date came up, that got put set aside. So we're
No,
just,
there's not
it's
enough
just
time in a
happening.
day.
It's never enough time in the day for music. I agree.
No.
So,
But I'm a huge believer in timing. So I
absolutely.
think, yeah, we were trying to record like 6 months ago, and we just, kept getting shows, kept getting shows.
Mhm.
But I'm actually glad it happened when it did because I feel like it gave us time to really um, evolve the songs
Mhm.
and make them into what they are. So timing's everything.
Exactly. And I believe in timing as well, that everything happens at a given time for a reason. So we just,
Yeah.
sometimes gotta go with the flow. And I'm excited for this show that we have coming up because this is only, well, not only, but it's been a while since I've, played with Ryan. Um, my first ever performance in the USA was actually with him, so I'm, kind of looking forward to it.
So
So,
awesome.
so Michelle, talking about your recording, I wanted to ask you, like, could you tell us a little bit about, some of the songs that you are working on? What genre is it? What sort of, music are you doing with this new, original work of yours?
Yeah, so it's very rock centered. I always uh it's so hard to describe a sound, but it's like pretty close to alternative rock in my opinion. Um a couple of the songs I wrote, one of the songs I wrote nearly 10 years ago, and it's been just kind of sitting in the vault, but it's interesting because it's completely evolved because I'm a much better musician than I was 10 years ago. But it's been really cool to rework it and to finally record it. And another song I wrote about 6 years ago, and in fact, I recorded the guitar and vocals in a studio about 6 years ago, and then got really busy with performing and just didn't really finish it. And now it's completely re-recorded and it's a completely different song as far as
Mhm.
sound wise. And I absolutely love it. So it's kind of just another reminder of timing.
Right.
And I mean, I'm sure it would have been a great song if I would have done it 6 years ago, but um, it's changed and evolved, and I'm so
Mhm.
happy to be releasing it now. And then the third song is actually a song I wrote within the past year. And when my bassist recently joined about a year and a half ago, um, that was the first original we introduced to him, and we were able to really focus on writing our own parts,
Right.
instruments, and I feel like that song is really very much so the Wolfpack. So it's
Oh,
been
nice.
really cool. Yeah.
And it's so exciting that, when you come across musicians, you form a band with musicians that sort of, think at the same wavelength as you. I mean, of course, one of the great
Yes.
things about music is that, we sort of play around with different ideas and different mindsets. But if all of those mindsets come at the same wavelength, I think that's just one of the best feelings ever, right?
Yes. It doesn't
So
always happen, but yeah,
doesn't always happen, yeah.
working with people is great. I'm a very open, easygoing person, so I feel like that plays to my advantage. And
Hmm.
you can always learn something. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I certainly, like I always say, I'm not the best that I'm going to be. I
Hmm.
hope to keep getting better 20, 30 years from now. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. So Michelle, I just wanted to ask you a couple more things that music as we've discussed, it's healing to us, musicians. It's like a therapy, it's a happy place and everything. And I've observed, um, at least in myself, that ever since I started doing more and more music, it sort of helped me generally in life. When it comes to work or just some general, daily things in life that we do, like it has changed my approach altogether. I see things differently. I meet with people differently. I would say I'm more empathetic towards them, not
Mm-hmm.
only because of the music that I've heard, but also a little bit of music that I have written as well. Because just like we're talking, that's the kind of zone that we are comfortable in. Writing that sad sort of melody and things like that. It just helps us connect with people. So I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, like, how has music helped you, in life in general, basically?
Well, like we've talked about, it's obviously a therapy, it's a release. It kind of makes life a little more livable. And just like my music journey, anyone's music journey, it's about growth. That's life. We're
Hmm.
always growing and learning. And I think it's just helped me grow a lot as a person, and have a lot of patience and be gentle with myself. Um, and I think music is a process and life is a process, and things just don't happen like that. And I think being a musician really teaches you that. Um, like we're playing shows now that I never would have thought we would play, and that I feel like took me so long to get into certain venues or to play certain songs even. And it's nice to look back on that growth. So I think it teaches you patience and growth, and it teaches you a lot about yourself and the human experience. I mean, we're all living that. So
Right. And I think the parallel that you just drew, by saying that life is a process and music is a process, and we just need to identify that, recognize that. And
yes,
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the best ways to describe music for me. So that was pretty special. So Michelle, two more things. This is one thing that I absolutely love asking people. So let's say you were, somewhere for 1 week. You had all the resources, you had food, you had money, you had, like anything that you need to live for a week. But the only choice you had, well, like the only constraint you had was that you would be listening to only one song for that entire week. If that was the case, what song would that be?
oh man, that is so hard. One song. Um,
Or I could also ask that, let's say if you're not able to decide what song you need to put on the radio, but there's just one song that you always can be like, oh, you know what? Let me just start by that.
okay, okay. Wow. I'll give you an artist.
Yeah, that works.
So, one of my biggest inspirations would be Elton John.
Oh,
So
yes.
any Elton John song, I grew up listening to a lot of Elton. So, pretty much anything by him,
Mhm.
I think I could survive off of.
That's awesome. I love Elton John, and I think he's one of those musicians. It doesn't matter which song it is. It's as long as the song is by him, it's that's enough, right?
Yep, exactly. And you always know if it's by him. I feel like
Exactly.
it's very identifiable.
Absolutely. For me, it's Africa by Toto, by the way.
I love it.
I love that
That's
song.
awesome.
That's one song I would always listen to.
So
So,
good.
so Michelle, towards the end, again, I want to remind my, our audiences here that just make sure you guys check out the description for all the dates, for Michelle's shows. And not only that, but also, I'm going to be having some links to her band page and some of her music work. So make sure you guys check that out. And Michelle, thanks again, for being with us today. I'm sure our listeners and viewers would
Absolutely.
have enjoyed the conversation today. And as I was talking with Ryan as well a few months ago, I said that okay, there would be a lot of inspiring artists watching or listening to this podcast as well. People that I like to look at as someone that I was maybe 10, 15 years ago, just wanted to do music but just didn't know where to start, what to do. And as any instrument, right, I mean, it's very frustrating in the beginning, but like you said, and you said it so beautifully, that it is a process. You have to sort of be patient with it. But if you were to give a message to all of our listeners and viewers, especially the inspiring artists, what would you say to them?
Um, if you love to do something, I think the biggest thing I know that has taken me as far as I've come in music is never forgetting why I do it, and that's because I love it. That's because it provides me happiness. It provides me therapy. It provides me sanity. So don't lose sight of that. And, there's artists of every kind, even if you don't do it professionally, even if you're not amazing at it at first, um, just do it. You don't have to be, incredibly gifted to play an instrument, to sing, to paint, to do any sort of art. I think that kind of, if if you're only doing it to be good at it, I think you're missing the point of what it is. It's everyone can be an artist. Everyone is an artist. Everyday life is art. So just don't lose sight of why you love to do it, if you love to do it, and you have to be patient. You have to keep doing it. It's it's certainly not for show. It's for you. So
Hmm.
don't be afraid to do it.
Absolutely. And I, you know, couldn't agree with that more because it's not a competition, right? It's just something that
No,
you want to do for your own happiness, for your own self. If it makes you happy,
yes.
hey, you got it. That's
Yeah.
that's
And
really
if
all
you
that matters at the
inspire
end.
others in the process, that's a win.
It's even
But
better, right?
yeah, I always I have a quote on our Facebook page, aspiring to inspire. That's kind of how I've
Oh,
always felt. So I've been inspired by many musicians and artists. So if I can inspire one person, it's a win for me. So
that's a win. Nothing can beat that. Well,
yeah.
Michelle, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for being with us. And again, I'm going to remind our listeners and viewers that make sure you guys check out all the links in the description. Michelle and her band Michelle Wolf and the Wolfpack. Again, one of the coolest names ever for the band. They have a
Thank
lot of
you.
shows coming up in the next few weeks, so make sure if you guys are in town in the area, you do not want to miss it. So make sure you guys go there and also check out the band page and some of the music work that she has coming up. And with that, Michelle, hopefully we'll get to talk again.
Yes.
And whenever I'm in Michigan, if your band is playing, I'm gonna make sure that I not only come by
Sounds
myself, but
good.
also I'm gonna bring my wife with me. So
Awesome. Likewise, if I'm in Texas. And thank you
absolutely.
so much for having me on. I've enjoyed conversating with you. And I have a song now that I'm thinking about it. If I
Yes.
was on that island, Fool in the Rain by Led Zeppelin. That is one of
Oh
my
wow.
favorite jams. That
That
would
is,
be like my
yeah.
happy song.
Happy song.
So
That's the
there it
word.
is.
That is the
Yes.
word. Yes. Well, I hope you have a great night ahead, Michelle, and
You
thanks again
too.
for being with us. And hopefully we'll, talk soon.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a good night. I appreciate it.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Brings me home, the light that guides the way, the thought of you alone.